Just trying to do a little spring cleaning here in the bee yard today. This is something personally I know I always struggle with. I tell you guys that, I'm not shy about it. But what I'm going through, I've just got, if you look around, I've just got pallets and stacks of just random stuff everywhere. And that's because as I come through the bee yard, I'm typically in a hurry and I'm a one-man show, and so I grab a box that I need and I throw it on the hive, and I take off a box that's, you know, absconded or whatever, and I throw it on a pallet and I'll stack, and I say, oh, I'll take care of that later, and then later doesn't ever really seem to happen. So anyway, going through today, just trying to organize. I've got, I don't know, 10 different pallets out here, and I'm just trying to get all of the like items on the same pallet, whatever that may be, or as many as I can. So, you know, I got a pallet over here. It's all 10 frame and 5 frame deeps with and without foundation. I make sure that every box, regardless of what's in it, make sure it has all of the same thing in it. So it's either all empty frames or it's all frames with foundation. Once I get them all sorted onto one pallet, then I'll try to go back through and split out into dedicated pallets for an exact item, depending on how many I have, whether it be all 10 frame deeps without foundation or all 10 frames with foundation, what have you. So just figured I'd shoot that out to you guys. Like I said, little spring cleaning, little organizing. I had this big pallet of stuff that was given to me by a friend. Well, given, bartered, whatever. He traded on honey. He was getting out of the business, or out of the game, if you will, out of the hobby. Found a few good nuggets in there. A couple of metal queen excluders, which I really needed. I don't typically run queen excluders. When I do, I have these old cheap plastic ones that are falling apart, so I'm really happy to have the metal ones. A couple of screen bottom boards, which I don't really usually mess with. What else was there? There was something else that was neat. Oh, there's some solid bottom boards that have the beetle blasters on them, so I'll be interested to try to put some of those on my hives and just see how they do. But this whole pallet was all reused equipment, cleaned up and painted by my father-in-law last summer sometime. He brought it over here and that's where she sat. So I have to go through that whole pallet box by box, see what's on it, see if any of it needs to be cleaned or redone. It should all be scraped clean. It was not re-dipped, so if there's any frames and foundation, they have to be re-dipped. And then all of this is all stuff that has come off the hives, whether they were slimed or absconded or just didn't use the box, doesn't matter. So that stuff all needs to be inspected, cleaned and re-dipped. Same for all this over here. It's all boxes that got pulled off, needs to be inspected, cleaned, and re-dipped. I've got a little junk pile forming up over here by the trailer of just woodenware junk that's rotted, needs to be thrown out. And I got another trash bag, another pile forming up there. So, you know, it sucks to throw stuff away, but be real with yourself, people. When this stuff starts to rot, just throw it away. I try to run it until it's falling apart, and then the problem is it literally falls apart when I need it, and that's no good. So anyway, yeah, long story short, short story long, I feel like. Spring cleaning, wish me luck. So this is actually really fun. I just swapped these boxes out on this stack because they were, the ones that were on there were really, really rotted. And that whole corner where the bees are clumped up at the second box height, the whole corner of that box was rotted off. I can show you here in a second. So I just swapped over and put all new solid boxes on, well, new-ish, but at least solid boxes that aren't full of holes. But the bees, because I mention this all the time, the bees are very visual. They have been going to that exact same spot all this time as their entrance. They haven't been using the bottom entrance. They've been going to that rotten corner. So that's where they're all trying to figure out now. They're saying, hey, this is where we used to get in and out. What the heck's going on? But they will figure it out. The new entrance is just a couple inches away. They'll figure it out just fine. I'll show you that box here. I mean, this thing looks like a squirrel chewed on it. And that whole corner is just gone. And you know what, honestly, the bees may have actually chewed on it a little bit. Looks like maybe there was a knot there. But this is a finger jointed box, or a box jointed box, I guess. That was one of my original boxes. I know that. That was because when that was back in the day when I was buying them pre-cut from Man Lake. So that was an original box from probably 2012. So yeah, to say that it's 2020, I got 8 years out of it. That's all right. But the bees will figure it out. I just thought that was funny. I just want to show you guys that. Hey Houston, just coming to you from the bee yard for what it's worth. No, I've got my suit on so you can't really see my face, but it's me, I promise. Hey, I was just going to show you what I did today. We put on our little pollen trap, and this is not something that I always run, but we will have fresh spring pollen coming in now. The way this little device works, for those of you that aren't beekeepers or are and you're curious, it's really not that complicated. There's a little trap door here on the front of the hive. So for right now, we've set it up and we've left the trap door down so the bees can get right back up into the hive just like they always have. And then after a couple of days of them being used to this thing on here, we're going to loosen this nut and we're going to raise this little trap door up. And what that does is makes the bees go in the bottom of the trap and they have to walk over a series of screens, and it just knocks the pollen baskets or the pollen balls off their legs. So it doesn't hurt the bees any. They're not squeezing through screens. They're just walking over screens. And then this little tray in the back is what catches it. So we'll just pull our little tray out. We'll have a pile of pollen in there. We harvest the pollen fresh. We freeze it fresh. We don't dry it out. We don't cook it. We just get it out, freeze it. So anyway, I was just going to show you that we're doing that today. That's the only pollen trap I have. I've had a couple people asking about it, but we will have some very limited pollen. So if you've got allergies, let me know. Hey guys, I was just going to show you real quick how we render down our beeswax. We try not to waste anything here at the operation. So any wax that we get from harvesting honey, from hives that die out, or from removal jobs, as long as the homeowner or client tells us that they haven't intentionally sprayed that comb with any sort of chemical. If they tell us that they've left them alone, then we treat that as, you know, the cleanest wax that anybody could get. So we bring it all home here and we melt it all down in this big pot right here. And I know that looks disgusting, but basically this is what we've got after 2 meltings. So when it all starts off, it's a bunch of big dirty combs. They got dead bees in them. They've got brood, they've got pollen, they've got everything in it. We melt it down once, and I'm going to show you a picture here at the end. After the first melt, there's a whole bunch of sludge and debris, but there's still a lot that's stuck in the wax. We scrape all as much off as we can. We melt it down again, and now we're left with a 99.9% clean block. You can see there's still a few little dead bees here and there stuck in it, and that very well could actually be a bee that landed in the pot after the wax was filtered. And the bottom, if you can see the bottom, it looks a little bit brown. Let me flip it over here so you can see. It's a little bit brown, but what we've done is we've scraped off all the rest of the remainder of the sludge down to where we started scraping wax. So at this point, like I said, it's 99.9% clean. And what we typically do, we do melt a little bit down. We cast it in half-pound bars if you want it for cosmetics or for making soap or whatever. That stuff we run through a coffee filter, so it is clean, clean, clean. Mostly what we do with is we block it up into chunks. It goes back into our bucket here, which of course also looks nasty. But this is our big melt bucket that we use for right now. We melt it all back down, and then all of our frames and foundation that we use, we dip back into molten wax to recoat it so that the bees will accept it better. It preserves the wood, makes it smell nice and attractive for the bees.